Father Mark and I, one in Lindsay for a lady that was 99 and a half years old, and then for Mike yesterday. Both people had strong faiths and firm foundations. I knew them both, so I knew that. And yes, they had both gone through lots of trials, lots of tribulation. They had gone through losing loved ones. They had gone through ups and downs in all parts of their lives. I think for the lady in Lindsay, one of the hardest things for her to go through was watching her little Episcopal church be closed several years ago when the diocese decided that 6 people coming every Sunday just wasn't enough to keep it open anymore.
Americans stand up and fight for what they believe
in. And for Mike to go through the last 15 years of his life living in a facility because he could no longer care for himself. And yet each one of those people found ways to share the love of God, no matter how handicapped they had become, physically or mentally, because they had that strong foundation. You and I, as I said before, we have that foundation. We come here to worship God. We need to know that He loves us. He really, really, really loves us. No matter what we've done and no matter who we are. And we are blessed to know a loving God in our lives.
I'm not really sure what our current president is.
So as you ponder some of these words this morning, just think about,
but I know this,
as I am going to think about,
in November,
am I really worthy?
We have got to stand on that hill.
Is my faith really that strong?
Conservative principles win the day.
Have I really held on to my faith? And am I really fighting the good fight as I should?
We've got to fight.
I hope I am. My hope is that you'll pray for me, because trust me, I'll be praying for you. Share your faith. Don't be discouraged about what's happening around us in the world. Try not to let it get in the way. And when you can, come here to worship our loving God, or turn on the technology and watch it. And know, and always know, that God is surrounding each of you today and tomorrow with His enduring love.
You know,
Amen.
President Donald Trump, the one that CNN and ABC and the rest of all these lying news agencies, don't get me started. I ain't got the 3 minutes.
I invite you to stand with me, turning to page 6 in your service bulletin. If you are worshiping with us at home, we are on page 326 of the Book of Common Prayer. We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. We believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only Son of God, eternally begotten of the Father, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, of one being with the Father. Through Him all things were made. For us and for our salvation, He came down from heaven, and by the power of the Holy Spirit, He became incarnate from the Virgin Mary, and was made man. For our sake He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. He suffered death and was buried. On the 3rd day He rose again, in accordance with the Scriptures. He ascended into heaven, and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead, and His kingdom will have no end. We believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father and the Son, With the Father and the Son, he is worshipped and glorified. He has spoken through the prophets. We believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. We acknowledge one baptism for the forgiveness of sins. We look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen.
Let us pray together now the prayers of the people. For those of you at home, they are found on page 385.
Ordinary men and women. When it was in peril during
I ask your prayer for God's people throughout the world, for Bishop Curry, our presiding bishop, for Bishop Paulson, our bishop, for this gathering, and for all ministers and people. Pray for the church.
to stand up and do extraordinary things.
I ask your prayers for peace, for goodwill among nations, and for the well-being of all people.
Believe in God.
Pray for
Read your
justice
Constitution.
and peace.
Hold them dear to your hearts. Place the
I ask your
sword
prayers
of
for the
truth
poor,
on
the
top
sick,
of that
the
bayonet
hungry,
of courage.
the oppressed, and those in prison.
Truth, excuse me.
Pray for those in any need or trouble.
Steel your spine.
I ask your prayers for all who seek God or a deeper knowledge of Him.
Let's sweep this socialist
Pray that they may
off
find
this
and be
blessed
found
land
by
we
Him.
call the shining city on the hill,
I ask your
the United
prayers
States
for the
of America.
departed,
God bless you all.
especially
God bless
for
Texas.
Gloria,
God bless North
Isabella,
Carolina. And God
and
bless
Mike.
the great
Are there
state of
others?
North Carolina. Thank you.
Come rain or shine, the job must get done.
Pray for
Catch
those
Steve in Denver and
who
Jimmy
have
Fresno.
died.
Always make it happen. And we're here for you with 24/7.
I ask your prayers
Granger.com
for
or just stop
Gavin,
by. Granger, for the ones
Nick,
who get it done.
Jane,
During a Senate Homeland
Joyce,
Security Committee hearing,
Greg,
Senator Josh Hawley questioned one of the
Father
nominees
Mark.
over anti-intellectualism
Are there
and
others?
the Republican Party. The nominee, Colleen Shogan, is President Biden's
I ask
choice
for your
to be
thanksgivings.
archivist for the United States National Archives and Records Administration. Hawley specifically questioned Shogan on an article. she
Praise
wrote
God for
entitled
those in every generation in whom Christ has been honored.
The Missouri Republican asked her point
Pray
blank
that we may
the
have
point
grace
she
to
was making in the
glorify
argument,
Christ
quote,
in our
Republicans
own
are
day.
stupid and Democrats are intellectual.
Lord God,
Shogan
Heavenly
responded,
Father,
quote,
creator of the
"Absolutely
universe,
not."
source of
Let's
life,
take a listen.
Senator Hawley.
we praise you for the gift of your Son, Jesus,
Thank you very
and
much.
for the abiding presence of his Holy Spirit in our
If I
lives.
could, you have talked
Receive the
throughout
prayers that we have offered.
today's hearing so far.
Hear the prayers that remain in our hearts,
Q&A about how much
and pray for us those good things for which we are not aware of our
Yes,
needs.
Senator.
And so, if you're
And we
confirmed,
ask
you
this
will
all
attempt
in
to stay
Jesus'
politically
name.
neutral in your decision-making.
Amen.
Is that fair to say?
Let us confess
Senator.
our sins against
Yes,
God
that's, yes.
and
So,
our neighbor.
I was troubled, I have to say, by this article that you wrote,
Most
Senator Portman asked
merciful
about a
God,
minute ago.
We confess that we have sinned against thee in thought, word, and deed,
Modern president,
by what we have done, and by what we have left undone.
2000.
We have not loved thee with our whole heart. We have not loved our neighbors as ourselves.
I consider
We are truly sorry, and we humbly repent.
1617.
For the sake of thy Son, Jesus Christ, have mercy on us and forgive
Write in
us,
your paper
that we may delight in thy will and walk in thy ways, to the glory of thy name. Amen.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. The
Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, who of his great
Plain,
mercy
common-sense terms.
hath promised forgiveness of sins to all
So, you
those
say recent
who with hearty
Republican
repentance
case studies
and
are
true
Dwight
faith turn unto
Eisenhower
him.
and
Have mercy
Ronald
upon
Reagan
you,
and
pardon
Franklin
and deliver you from all your sins,
George W. Bush.
confirm and strengthen you in all goodness, and bring you to everlasting life through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Democrats, on the
Amen.
other hand, coalesce
The
on
peace of the Lord be always with you.
So is the point that Republicans are stupid and Democrats are intellectual?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Absolutely not. The point of the article is that the presidents that I featured in it have a rhetorical connection with the American people.
A rhetorical connection that you say is anti-intellectual, and you feature every two-term Republican president, going back to Dwight Eisenhower.
Yes, Senator, I think it's a piece on rhetoric, and it is really looking at how these presidents have been successful rhetorically in their arguments.
Interesting. It's a piece on rhetoric, but you attribute part of the anti-intellectualism of the Republican Party to, in your words, the rise of the religious right. Tell me about that. Is it because those voters are stupid?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Absolutely not. And if I am confirmed as Archivist of the United States, I look forward to welcoming all Americans to the National Archives.
So, do you think that people who voted for Donald Trump are anti-intellectual?
Thank you, Senator. I would not make any judgment on the people who voted for President Trump or any other president.
So you don't think the people who voted for Dwight Eisenhower or Ron
Walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself for us, an offering and sacrifice to God?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. As I said, presidents are able to speak in common sense, plain terms to Americans that they understand.
So you characterize President Reagan as having, quote, less than impressive intellectual capacities. You said President Eisenhower and Bush were decidedly intellectual. You said Reagan engaged in intellectual posturing. Let's just start with the first one. Less than impressive intellectual capacities. So in other words, it's dumb.
Thank you, Senator. Absolutely not. That was a perception, and it was cited.
I'm sorry, it's a perception by whom? By you? You wrote about it.
No, Senator. That was, and as I said, in the article, that is a perception. But actually, in the article, because...
You say Reagan's less than impressive intellectual capacities have been widely discussed. That's presented as a factual statement. You don't even cite for it. This is on page 298. I have your article. Don't dissemble in front of me. So Reagan's less than impressive intellectual capacities have been widely discussed. You're not saying that he had less than... That's not your view?
Thank you, Senator. It is not my view.
Why did you write it?
Thank you, Senator. That is not my view. My view was focused on his rhetorical capabilities.
That's not what your sentence says. Listen, you wrote an article saying basically that Republican voters are stupid, that Republican presidents deliberately appeal to anti-intellectualism. You rolled it all up in this thing called Republican populism, yet you're trying to present yourself here as a nonpartisan. In fact, you're an extreme partisan, and your record shows that. You're someone who has denigrated Republican presidents, every two-term Republican president, I hope I'm not leaving anybody out, that has, since the Second World War, and their voters, in this lengthy article. I mean, I just don't understand. If you wrote it, why won't you stand behind it?
Thank you, Senator. I will stand by my long experience, over 15 years of nonpartisan service.
You know, this is not just a theoretical set of questions, because as you know, we have seen what happens when you have political activists in the position that you are up for confirmation for. And we are living through that as a nation right now. We are living through the weaponization, the political weaponization of the National Archives, the political weaponization of the Department of Justice, the political weaponization of the FBI.
All things come of thee, O Lord, and of thine own have we given thee.
The president
Amen.
calls half the voters of this country semi-fascists, who have said that they are a
In
threat
addition to the symbols of our life and our labor, we offer to God our Father and our Lord Jesus Christ these blankets on behalf of
So
Charlotte,
in that environment,
Jackie,
to have you up for
and
confirmation
Teresa.
for this position, which has
And
become
I invite
very
your prayers.
politically charged, in a way I lament. It should not have been.
Gracious God, Heavenly Father, we praise you for your promise to be among
Has done
us.
what it has done. DOJ has
And
done
we
what
pray
they
for
have done.
Charlotte,
Here
Jackie,
you are,
and Teresa
talking
and the
about
blankets
the
that we now
anti-intellectualism
prepare
and
for
stupidity
them.
of American voters.
That your Holy Spirit may rest upon them and these blankets, and that the blankets in
How can you
particular
assure me, or
would be
anybody
symbols of your abiding
that
presence and
millions of Americans,
promise,
75 million Americans,
and
who
that
voted
through the
for
warmth that they provide, that your Spirit may warm their hearts and their bodies and their souls, and bring them into the fullness of life.
Thank you,
And we
Senator.
ask this in
I
Jesus'
stand by
name.
my record of nonpartisan
Amen.
service at the Congressional Research Service, the Library of Congress, and at the White House's
The Lord be
Historical
with you.
Association. And I invite anybody
Lift
to
up your
talk to
hearts.
the people that I have worked
Lift
with
them up
for
unto the
years.
Lord.
in
Let
my
us give thanks unto our Lord God.
Mr. Chairman, without objection, I'd like to enter this article.
It is very meet and right and our bounden duty that we should, at all times and in all places, give thanks unto thee, O Lord, Holy Father, Almighty, everlasting God, who by water and the Holy Spirit hast made us a new people in Jesus Christ our Lord, to show forth thy glory in all the world. And therefore with angels and archangels, and with all the company of heaven, we laud and magnify thy glorious name, evermore praising thee and saying, Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts, heaven and earth are full of thy glory. Glory be to thee, O Lord Most High. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest.
As a crusader, here's what she said, quote,
All glory be to thee, Almighty God, our heavenly Father, for that thou of thy tender mercy didst give thine only Son, Jesus Christ, to suffer death upon the cross for our redemption, who made thereby his one oblation of himself once offered, a full, perfect, and sufficient sacrifice, oblation and satisfaction for the sins of the whole world. And did institute, and in his holy gospel command us to continue, a perpetual memory of that his precious death and sacrifice until his coming again. For in the night in which he was betrayed, he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he brake it and gave it to his disciples, saying, Take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Likewise, after supper, he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, Drink ye all of this, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for you and for many for the remission of sins. Do this as oft as ye shall drink it in remembrance of me. And wherefore, O Lord and heavenly Father, according to the institution of thy dearly beloved Son, our Savior Jesus Christ, we thy humble servants do celebrate and make here before thy divine majesty with these thy holy gifts, which we now offer unto thee, the memorial thy Son hath commanded us to make. Having in remembrance his blessed passion and precious death, his mighty resurrection and glorious ascension, rendering unto thee most hearty thanks for the innumerable benefits procured unto us by the same. And we most humbly beseech thee, O merciful Father, to hear us, and of thy almighty goodness vouchsafe to bless and sanctify with thy word and Holy Spirit these thy gifts and creatures of bread and wine, that we receiving them, according to thy Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ's holy institution, in remembrance of his death and passion, may be partakers of his most blessed body and blood. And we earnestly desire thy fatherly goodness, mercifully to accept this our sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving, most humbly beseeching thee to grant that by the merits and death of thy Son, Jesus Christ, and through faith in his blood, we and all thy whole church may obtain remission of our sins and all other benefits of his passion. And here we offer and present unto thee, O Lord, ourselves, our souls and bodies, to be a whole, reasonable, holy, and living sacrifice unto thee, humbly beseeching thee that we, and all others who shall be partakers of this holy communion, may worthily receive the most precious body and blood of thy Son, Jesus Christ, be filled with thy grace and heavenly benediction, and made one body with him, that he may dwell in us and we in him. And although we are unworthy through our manifold sins to offer unto thee any sacrifice, yet we beseech thee to accept this, our bounden duty and service, not weighing our merits, but pardoning our offenses through Jesus Christ our Lord, by whom and with whom, in the unity of the Holy Ghost, all honor and glory be unto thee, O Father Almighty, world without end. Amen. And now as our Savior Christ hath taught us, we are bold to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
And urinating and defecating on their front lawn in front of their children and cursing at their kids that, hey,
Alleluia, Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast. Alleluia.
And does it again, it's not a crime tomorrow either. Remember, always decline to prosecute.
These are the gifts of God, and you are the people of God.
What else? Receiving stolen property. So it's good news. At least she's analytically complete.
I want to draw your attention. You're in the Eucharistic prayer. The whole liturgy is woven with Scripture, but in the last paragraph before the doxology, it says, although we are unworthy through our manifold sins to offer unto thee any sacrifice, yet we beseech thee to accept this our bounden duty and service, not weighing our merits, but pardoning our offenses through Jesus Christ our Lord. You can hear the echoes of that gospel story of the Pharisee standing, just important to have those background messages coming through to us.
Open season for people who've had their license suspended because they're
Body and blood of our Lord Jesus
endanger the
Christ.
safety of innocent people, of children. They get in a car and drive, they get pulled
body
over,
of
you don't have a
Christ,
license.
the
Hey,
bread
no
of heaven.
problem, keep on driving. Let us know when you kill someone when you're drunk next time. What else is not
Blood
a
of
crime,
Christ, the cup of salvation.
according to this radical? B&E, which all of us who watch Law and Order knows that stands for breaking and entering, into a vacant property to sleep or escape the cold. Okay. That sounds kind of reasonable. All right, a vacant lot, it's cold, you're going there. All right, that actually on the list, you can understand the reasoning. If it's cold, you're breaking into a vacant lot. It's vacant, there's not anyone there to be hurt. You can understand that one. And at least she has the good sense to say it's got to be vacant, because that way no innocent people will be hurt, right? Well, what's the next one on the list? B&E into a non-vacant property to sleep or escape the cold. Well, what's a non-vacant property? Like, I don't know, your home? So apparently what she's saying is if it's cold outside, it is no longer a crime for somebody to break into your home, so they can trespass on your property. They can break into your home, they can commit larceny, and apparently sleep in your living room. Now, I want each of you to imagine, look, there's an element of, how would you answer one of your constituents if someone is doing this? And the answer from the prosecutor is, we will always dismiss the case. What else won't she prosecute? Wanton or malicious destruction of property. I don't know about you, but wanton and malicious are typically pretty bad. Ain't a crime under her. What else? You could say, well, at least none of these are violent, right? Well, breaking into a non-vacant property, that has the potential for violence. You know what else is not a crime? Threats. You can make a direct threat. You can threaten innocent people. You can threaten children. You can commit threats. Not a crime. What else is not a crime? Minor in possession of alcohol. Kids apparently drink like crazy guys, party when you got it. What else is not a crime? It's not just alcohol. Okay, you got kids with beer. All right, that's not the first time that's ever happened. Well, marijuana possession of marijuana paraphernalia. Okay, you got some recreational pot. There's some jurisdictions that have legalized that, understand that. Well, but it's just the users, right? It's the low-level guys. Nope. What's the next one they don't prosecute? Possession with intent to distribute. So if you're a drug dealer, get yourself to Massachusetts. You know, it used to be that you had to pay off a prosecutor and have a corrupt prosecutor on the payroll. to get out of jail. Now you've got someone who's just openly saying, drug dealers, come to Massachusetts because we don't prosecute people for possession with intent to distribute. And by the way, you might say, well, it's just marijuana. There are a lot of places that say marijuana is not too bad.
Let us
What's
pray.
the next one on the list? Non-marijuana.
Almighty and ever-living God,
So,
we most heartily thank Thee for that Thou dost feed us in these holy mysteries with the spiritual food of the most precious body and blood of Thy Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, and dost assure us thereby of Thy favor and goodness towards us, and that we are very members and corporate in the mystical body of Thy Son, the blessed company of all faithful people, and are also heirs through hope of Thy everlasting kingdom. And we humbly beseech Thee, O Heavenly Father, so to assist us with Thy grace, that we may continue in that holy fellowship, and do all such good works as Thou hast prepared for us to walk in. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, to whom with Thee and the Holy Ghost be all honor and glory, world without end. Amen.
but it's open season. Apparently resisting arrest is now the
May God, the Holy
interacting
Trinity,
with the police.
make you strong in faith and love, defend you on every side, and guide you in truth and peace, and the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen.
At an earlier
Let us go forth in the name of
Rollins also
Christ.
spoke about the much discussed concept of defunding the police. Okay, let's find out. Where is she on defunding the police? She said that defund is not the verb she would use. Okay, that's good. I'm sure every Democratic talking point is going to take that portion of the statement. She wouldn't use the verb defund, but rather reimagine. Okay, reimagine may be good, may be bad.